My name is Roxana Ortega-Hart, and I'm a victim services counselor with the Austin Police Department assigned to the Sex Crimes Unit. When a victim has a very traumatic event happen in their life, we provide stabilization, crisis intervention, grounding techniques. We also provide them with safety planning, information on resources, their victim rights, and follow-up counseling as needed. So when a victim makes a report to the police department, an officer will show up and take that report. Any kind of sexual assault case or sexual assault related crime would get routed to our sex crimes unit. At that point, it goes into a queue of cases that my supervisor will review every day and then assign it to one of our 6 counselors in the unit. At that time, I'll come in that morning, I will review what cases have been assigned to me, read the entire report, and then I'll follow up, typically with a phone call to that victim. So we're looking at a few days following the assault. When I first call a victim, I introduce myself. I explain what my role is within the department, explain my limits of confidentiality to them. I check it to see how they're doing. How are they coping with this traumatic event that has just happened to them? I try and answer any questions that they might have about the criminal justice process, what they can expect to see next, or when they expect to hear from the investigator. I provide them with information on options, on resources that could be helpful to them at this time. And then I explain that I can provide them with the detective's information, my follow-up information, and that I'm available to work with them whether they pursue this case or not throughout the entire investigation. When a victim reports a sexual assault to police, they make the decision as to whether or not the investigation will continue. At any time during this investigation, they can request that the investigation stop. All the information will be saved and the case can be suspended until the victim is ready to proceed with the investigation, if that time ever comes. If they decide they don't want to move forward with the investigation, victim services counselors are still available to provide support and information as needed. The appointment's usually made over the phone by the investigator, and we try and schedule so that the investigator and victim services can meet with the victim at the same time. I'll usually go downstairs to the lobby, meet with the victim, escort them up to an interview room. Then I will meet with the victim for about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on their needs, and try and answer any other questions that they might have, offer grounding techniques that they can use during the interview. I explain what they can expect to experience from the interview or what kind of questions might be asked. I also offer to sit in with them during the interview if they feel that that might be helpful. And then after we're done talking, I'll let the detective know that the victim is ready to provide her statement, and the detective will then begin to record the interview and walk in and start it.
When our interviews are done, it's generally after a 2-day sleep cycle. Maybe remember more than they did say initially when trauma was initially happening. I generally like to start my interviews by introducing myself, talking about honesty, explaining that there's no judging in the room. We're here to just talk about what happened and see what we can do to make things move in the direction that the survivor wants them to move. All of the interviews take a different amount of time. It's anywhere from 20 minutes to 3 to 4 hours. It just depends on what exactly happened. My first little 5-minute spiel of introducing myself and talking about body parts and that they don't have to feel uncomfortable. I realize we don't know each other. I ask them to talk about the sexual assault that happened. Initially, it's free-flowing. They can give their version of events. After they've said everything that they've said, I generally have follow-up questions, and that's where things get a little bit more precise. For example, they may say, he did that to me. Well, I need to get a little bit more clarification on what that means, and that's, again, where we start talking about maybe the body parts of what part of the body. And it's totally fine if they don't know the answer. They're not expected to know the answer. Sometimes There was drugs, sometimes there was alcohol, so it's perfectly fine if they don't remember what happened, that we continue the conversation.
When I'm working with a victim of domestic violence who's also experiencing intimate partner sexual assault, it's not my job to convince them to do anything. What I do is I provide information so that they can make the best decision for them. When a victim of domestic violence leaves a violent relationship, that is the most dangerous time for them. The violence escalates, the risk for homicide escalates. Abusers tend to become more controlling during that time. So it's really a decision that a victim has to make because they know their situation better than anyone else. I do safety plan with victims who choose to stay in the relationship for now. And I tell them that deciding to stay for now is common and it's understandable. If at any time they're ready to leave, there are resources to help. And I'm one of those resources. As an employee of the Austin Police Department, I have to share information that is shared with me by the victim with the investigator, and I have to make notes in the report in the form of a supplement. So when I first speak with the victim, I inform them and I try to explain very clearly what that means. Because we're counselors, a lot of people would assume that we keep everything confidential. I've worked with several victims who weren't sure they wanted to make a report because they didn't know what would be expected of them, or they weren't sure if they could have the case suspended right after reporting it. So I would walk them through what they can expect after making a report. I would speak with them about their rights and what it would look like, and the statute of limitations and things like that, so that they can make the best decision for them when it comes to making that report. It's different for every victim that we speak with. Some victims don't want to be contacted at all. Some call frequently, and we leave it up to them. I usually like to check in with victims a few days after they come in to make a statement, just to see how they've been coping with that. The criminal justice process itself can be its own trauma aside from the assault trauma. So we work really closely with victims throughout the process, just to make sure that they're doing okay and are coping well. Victims can call us anytime, whether they have a report or not. A victim can reach Victim Services by calling our main line, and it's 512-974-5037. They can also reach out to the Sex Crimes Unit and ask to speak with their assigned counselor, or if I've already spoken with them, then I will have provided my direct line where they can leave a confidential message.
Sexual assault is never your fault, no matter what the circumstances. If you think that you've been sexually assaulted, we want you to know that you have options, and you can reach out to Victim Services anytime to get information about what your options are, even if you desire to not make a police report.